greetings to you, Ryan, and hello to everyone listening to us here tonight from wherever it is that you're calling in from.
Hello, can you see me? By the way, I can't see myself.
I can see you loud and clear, and I'm seeing Prashant, and I know Caroline's there as well. Well, we've made it here, mate, and thank you everyone for coming along. My name's Simon Mildren from HiveKeepers.
You're screen sharing, aren't you?
I'm still screen sharing. That'll be the deal. But what about now? Does that tidy it up for you?
Hey, hello. There you go.
Hey, now we've got everyone in picture, have we?
Sorry, I interrupted your intro. Go.
That's all good. No. Look, g'day, guys. It's Simon from HiveKeepers. Look, we're a beekeeping tech company down here in Melbourne doing all sorts of things with bees. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
And I'm Ryan Moloney. I am a beekeeper from Beachbox Honey down in the Mornington Peninsula. And it is very, very cold down here. And each Hive Buddies show, we get together and we try to bring you a show that is a little bit informative, it's a little bit of fun, and occasionally it's downright weird.
It starts off weird, so we've already ticked that box. I have a funny feeling.
Who's having fun with this music? I tell you.
Oh, we're doing our absolute best, that's for sure. Look, we get each time we do one of these, we're getting some help from one of our guest buddies, and this time we've got Caroline Hammond joining us from Come Fly With Me Beekeeping, and she reported to us earlier that it's pretty much snowing where she is. And we have a funny feeling that it might also be impacting the quality of the satellite connection to and fro, but we'll work through it. Someone's already commented on the quality of my microphone tonight, so I'm tipping the atmospheric conditions are a bit wild out there. But not to worry. I'll check back in shortly with you, Caroline, and we'll give you the ultra awesome intro that you absolutely deserve. But in the short term, Ryan, I'm going to throw to you to see if you've got any awesome revelations from the last week or two.
I think probably the first revelation is somebody, either you or Prashant, is having a lot of fun with your music selection, because I was quite relaxed through that 10-minute countdown.
That was very calm moment.
And then we went straight out of that to the ding, 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 ding.
It's almost like that was deliberate.
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Right. Anyway. All right. So my revelation for today. Okay. My revelation is to be inquisitive. Be an inquisitive beekeeper. All right. Follow your own path. So what I'm talking about here is, so in my mind, right, I like building beehives, and in my mind, there is these kind of, there's this perfect kind of beehive scenario. And I think kind of what most of us deal with is actually incorrect. And I've got my reasons for thinking that, even just like the simple thing of when you go to pull the boxes apart and they've built the comb in between, and they've built the comb in between because there's too much room in between them. Right. So manufacturers are kind of like, they're building the boxes too tall, or there's too much gap and all that kind of stuff, or the frame manufacturers. Anyway, so in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's got to be better ways to do things. So as such, I put out a thing on Facebook just saying, hey guys, I'm thinking about building telescopic lids and all this kind of stuff to actually, to decrease or to get the correct bee space, should I say, and all this kind of jazz. If anyone's got any suggestions or anything to that I could learn somewhere along the line. And I got back, like quite a few people just sent me kind of like books to read or papers to read. And it's just been an absolute joy just diving into these papers and learning more and finding out more. Because I'm learning about hive design, but it's just teaching me so much more. Yeah.
What we almost need to do there is maybe we need to start up a thread on Hive Buddy itself where you can channel everyone that's listening, get all their information coming into you so you can design the perfect hive for Ryan. And like you said, it's a personal thing. But like I've got these wild ideas. If you need, the inside needs to be a dome shape so it sort of imitates a hollow a little bit more and it rolls the moisture away from the hive. so it doesn't drip through it, and just minimizing that space above, like you said, like lots of insulation up there. But anyway, I haven't gone away and built my own hives yet, so I can't speak to that just yet. But is there anything that stands out?
Well, I suppose, and along that, sorry, I won't go off on a tangent because you just triggered another tangent in my head.
Of course there is.
Because you know what, I will actually say this: if anyone knows anything about Kenyan top bar hives, sorry, I think that they are probably the best in hive design in the way that that the roof space, the cavity above it, is correct. They build natural combs, so they actually build out to the sides, to the correct sides and the depth and all of that kind of stuff. So we're letting the bees actually fill that space, and they fill it correctly, as opposed to our frames, which are man-made and incorrect. But anyway, so this kind of led to the thing of just kind of the importance of just being inquisitive. Don't let your ego and your natural competitive nature about things, or reading things on Facebook saying, oh wow, this person pulled off 40 kilos of honey and all this kind of stuff. You know what, as I'm learning, is that beekeepers are very much like fishermen. Very much like fishermen. It's always, we did this, we've got so much, and sometimes it's true, I think, anyway. But don't compare yourself to other people. You're in different places, you've got different conditions, your bees are in different conditions.
Totally.
Just do the right thing for those bees. And even to the point of going, oh man, this one, like I'm going through some of my hives and some of them have got EFB, right? And I'm like, oh, it's gone from a 10 frame, and now I'm dropping it down to a nuke. And I sit there and go, oh my God, I'm such a bad beekeeper. What have I done? How have I stuffed this up? What is it that I'm doing wrong? And then it's just like, oh my God, get rid of your ego, mate. This isn't about you. Pack it down to a nuke, do all the right things, and then monitor it and see what happens.
Just look after the girls.
Just do the right thing. So 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 that's my revelation: is be inquisitive, enjoy the journey, and take the ego out, and just love what you're doing.
That's nice. And the thing that I think of immediately when you say that too is, I'm not impressed by the person who has lots of beehives, nor am I that excited about the person who can tell me how many kilos that they can get and see that as a competition, like you mentioned before. I'm more impressed about the person who goes away and seeks all the learning opportunities from every moment that they can when they do this. That's more exciting and so much more meaningful for everybody, and especially that beekeeper.
Yeah.
Good times, man.
And even to the point where, like, there was another post on Facebook. I think his name is Aussie Christos, right?
Yeah.
And he said he called himself a beginner beekeeper, and somebody else laughed because he was like, you a beginner beekeeper? He was like, yeah, 35 years, but I'm still a beginner. I'm still learning. Well
put. That's cool.
Nice.
That's having your ego in check, isn't it? That's ace.
Yeah.
I love it, mate. Well, I might tell you a bit of one of my findings from the last week or two. And it was from one of our listeners from the last time that was listening in, a friend of yours called Matt. He was saying, like, Simon, if you're into all these other things, and some of those people might remember we talked about beekeeping folklore and a few things like that last time.
That's it. Yeah.
Got the weird element. Well, he made a suggestion of something that we need to listen to. And he said, Simon, have you heard about Elvish Honey? Have you got your head around that one much, Ryan?
No. Look, he sent me a bit of a link and all that kind of stuff, and all I did was I just went, well, look, I'm just going to pass this over to the weird one, and I emailed it to you.
Wait. That's true. Fair call. Touche. You can win that one. Well, let me tell you what Elvish Honey is known for, and I'll share this link later on so people can go and have a look for themselves. But it is known to be the most expensive honey in the world.
What do you mean?
It is the most expensive honey in the world, and everyone thinks it's that other stuff from New Zealand, whatever they call it, is the big one. But no, this is the particular one that's particularly special. So, Elvish Honey comes from Turkey.
If it was anything from Lord of the Rings, that comes from New Zealand too. So
it's kind of fitting, isn't it? I didn't realise that. So it comes from Turkey, and a kilogram of this specially extracted honey that actually comes from caves, not inside beehives, can be selling for an equivalent of $6,500.
What?
And that's US dollars, so it's even a more ridiculous amount when you consider the Australian dollar conversion rate. So that's a lot of money getting on there, isn't it? But what I love is the fact that we haven't gone away and tried to engineer something for bees to live in to create such a valuable honey. This has happened naturally, deep within a cave system where there is naturally like a high quality, mineral rich environment for the bees to go and create a nectar from.
Hang on. So hang on. What kind of bees are they? Do you know?
In Turkey, my understanding is that would be European honeybees, but I don't know specifically if that's exactly the case. I guess there's every chance that it's a particular genera or species or subspecies, I should probably say, which actually it is, which is a little bit different to maybe what you and I have in our own beehives at home.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like it's something that's a bee species naturally occurring in that area of Turkey. My research didn't dive as deep as that. Maybe someone would like to fill our boots with that information between now and next week.
What kind of, are you saying that they're eating like the stuff in the hive, or do they exit the hive to get the nectar?
So they do.
Stuff in the hive.
So apparently in those hills there, and Prashantal like this, we're always talking about in India and the hills of India and medicinal honey from there. But in these areas of Turkey, there are really special medicinal plants that only sort of grow in those rocky hills there, and these caves, these cylindrical caves that seem to be the ideal place for honeybees to go and create some sort of a nest. The beekeepers over there have to climb up and actually remove them and bring them down and extract the honey that way. And as such, the price is ridiculously high. And as with anything medicinal, there's always someone out there that is prepared to spend a huge amount. Now, my question for you is, 5 years or so ago, the very first kilo ever harvested and sold, went for a certain amount on the French stock exchange. Why the stock exchange? I've got no idea. It's just bizarre. But have you got any wild guess of an idea how much that might have cost for a kilo of honey?
So the first kilo. All right.
First kilo.
Stock exchange. And you're saying it goes for about 6,000
€500. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say the first kilo, let's say 20,000.
Oh, look, that's probably not a bad guess, but you're a little bit short. It went for €45,000.
Oh my Lord.
Just a kilo of honey. So that's pretty wild, isn't it? But anyway, that's like a super awesome story. And I was so grateful for Matt to go, hey, you need to look over here and see this. And that's what we want.
If anyone else has got anything like that, please let us know. Share
it. That's the point, is I'm sure someone else knows something equally as bizarre or intriguing, or we've certainly had some of the weird. Send it through, share it with us, and then we can share it with everyone else that's here, and we can make sure everyone gets to hear what's going on.
I just mentioned on the chat that Pashmina goat meat. Pashmina is a goat, and its wool is like Merlin wool there. And its meat is considered as medicinal because it eats specific shrubs in the upper reaches of Himalayas, and its meat is actually considered medicinal.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
Can you tell if you throw it on the barbie if it removes the medicinal qualities?
Yeah, superheating it. You have to eat it raw.
Chance it probably does. Isn't
it has to be eaten raw and unfiltered, right?
Oh, that's exactly
properly cooked.
Yeah.
I promised one to Simon when he comes to India.
Oh, it better happen soon.
Let's get Caroline on. Caroline's
I'm going to say, we need to get our guest buddy Caroline Hammond on the line with us. Thank you for patiently sitting off to the side while we go through a bit of the bazaar. But Caroline is from Come Fly With Me Beekeeping, and she'd be familiar to plenty of the Hive Buddy community by now. But you've got a little bit of an interesting story behind your sort of interest into hobby beekeeping. And when we spoke earlier, it's sort of, I suppose, the initial steps to that weren't too uncommon to most of us, because you're sort of saying, look, you had like a desire for that sort of sustainable life, minimal impact, grow your own food, have your own chickens. And that's probably pretty common, that part of it. And that then it leads on to having a beehive, because actually that was actually quite similar to me, in all honesty. So most people listening would get and understand that. But then that's where it changed a little bit for you. So you went away and worked with a beekeeper who acted as a bit of a mentor to you. So you had this great opportunity to soak up all this awesome information. And that's where you met one of our other mentors, Carmel, as well, and just gathered all this great experience and knowledge. And then as you decided that you had a bit of a background knowledge in business, you told this beekeeper, I'm coming to work for you because you need someone like me. And it sort of all happened, didn't it? Before you know it, you're sort of on board and part of that particular business. Anyway, due to some unfortunate circumstances, that business ended and it had to sort of all disappear. And you had like heaps of people reaching out to you going, hey, need help. And you were desperately trying to help all these awesome people who were like so keen to keep their bees going, but needed that little bit of a help. And is it fair to say, Caroline, that that was sort of your beginning in education and mentorship and working with lots of different beekeepers, helping them become better at what they do?
Oh, definitely. Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Yeah, I guess the way I describe my introduction to beekeeping as a business is very similar to that. You know, it started off as a hobby. I got immersed into the industry. I met some amazing people and learnt a lot very quickly. You know, as a backyard beekeeper, we tend to be only opening our hives every fortnight or so, whereas I was opening hives a lot more often than that, with a range of different teachers as well, a range of different experienced people. And I've really just picked up a lot along the way in a short amount of time. And I describe it as a bittersweet situation because unfortunately that all ended. And yeah, but out of that came this amazing opportunity for me, and it just organically grew from something really small into where I am today. And I still consider myself to be fairly small scale, but I'm really like, it's grown organically. I haven't done a lot of you know, out there marketing because it is just me, and I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. You know, I'm busy enough as it is. Yeah.
You have lots of fun heading around all over Victoria and rescuing beehives from lots of unusual places. So, like, not many people can say they get that privilege. So you get to see lots of cool sites and like work with bees like most days of the week. So that's a pretty cool way for that to be.
What can you see happening in your own apiary and in your clients' apiaries at the moment?
Well, at the moment, in my own apiary, so just cut me off anytime you need to do the video thing in case you can't you do that. Yeah, all good. So in my own apiary, I've just moved a whole stack of hives down to Canola, just near the beautiful Rosedale area in East Gippsland. They're going to be there for producing nucleus hives. So I've taken orders for just 20 nucleus hives this season.
Do you take, are they like double brood 8 frames or 10 frames, and then you let them build up to the point where they're nearly about to swarm, and then you split them off and make the nukes? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, pretty much. Most of my hives coming out of winter, like I overwinter in a double brood, basically one brood. I run the Paradise Honey poly hive, so they're a 9 frame. So I overwinter with one brood box and a full honey super. Some of them I put a feeder on just in case, because I was like, oh, I don't know about you girls, because I have a lot of hives in different locations. So some of them are in suburban backyards where there's a great amount of floral resources available for them. Some of them are here where like it's nearly snowing now and it's September. So I put the feeders on just in case they need a bit of help. But I've just taken, I think 15 or so down to Canola. And a couple of those are actually there to build up their strength as well. One was a cutout that I did from a church. And that's got a virgin queen in it at the moment, so she needs to be in amongst some nice fellas. So she's gone down there, and but what I'll do is I'll just let them build up and then split them down and walk away with those nukes and bring them back to this home apiary and then introduce a new mated queens.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, gotcha. So do you let them make an emergency queen up in the canola and then you bring them down and replace the queen? Is that what you do? Sorry, I was just...
No, I'd prefer not to. I'd prefer to, the moment I split the mother colony, the big hive, when I split that, I bring it back to the apiary.
Oh, that's when it comes back. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, at the right time when I'm expecting, I've either got the queens or I'm expecting them any day.
So not me, gotcha.
No, you've had quite an experience the last couple. Yeah, we've got to hear about that, Ryan. Yeah, you've got to take us through that scenario.
Gotcha.
You know what it's like. We as beekeepers have great intentions, and that's what I always say to my beekeeping clients: is you go to the hive with an intention, but as soon as you open that lid, you've got to be prepared to just respond to whatever is happening in there, and it might be the complete opposite of what you expected.
Do you know what my intention is every time I go out beekeeping? Is to be back by the time the kids finish school. That's always my intention. Does it happen? Very rarely.
Oh, yeah. To be back before would be my good one.
Yeah. I said I was only going to be an hour, and whoops, I don't know what happened.
Well, perhaps, Ryan, you should share a little bit about what you've been up to and let everyone know what's been happening in your hives and around your area.
Oh, I tell you what has been happening in my hives, EFB. That has been happening in my hives. And I'll just talk about, because you know what, I think probably perhaps in the next show we might talk about bee biosecurity and all that kind of stuff.
I think so.
So you know how, like, especially in Victoria, I know it's not this case in other places around Australia and around the world for other people watching it at the moment. But in Victoria, what's happened is spring kind of sprung and it went pop and all the trees went, and now it's gone back to winter, right? And so what's going on is the beehives, if they go into states of stress, they can develop EFB, and AFB will be something that will be there, but can kind of be really exacerbated throughout stressful times as well. So chalk brood and sac brood and all that kind of stuff can really kick off through times of stress. But what I'm finding is, so when spring springs and they produce a whole bunch of bees, what happens is that those bees actually spend a shorter amount of time as being a nurse bee. They get sent out in the field early, right? And so now all of a sudden you've got this extra kind of population, but without the nurse bees to actually back it up.
Yep.
So during the day, especially like days like today where it's absolutely freezing, or not necessarily today actually, because you probably had quite a few in the hive, but on days where it's still kind of a little bit sunny, so the field bees are going out, so the hive temperature is dropping, and you've got a smaller amount of nurse bees trying to maintain this larger brood area, and that can tip off EFB. So just keep an eye out for it in your hives, because it's something that you do need to deal with and pack them down. And they will get better if you look after them right. If you don't, they will die. So that's the short, and they'll pass it on to, well, they won't pass it on necessarily to other hives. Other hives will go in and rob the weakened hive, and then now you've got them into another one. I've just seen someone say, what does EFB stand for? European foul brood, as opposed to the American foul brood.
Maybe a good follow-up question to that one by Kate is also, what does it manifest like? When do you know, Ryan? Oh, I think I might have EFB.
Okay, so EFB is normally affects the brood and the larvae before they get capped. They will still get capped, and you will still find them in capped cells, but you'll see it as opposed to AFB. AFB typically affects them after they're capped. So if you're trying to wonder which one it is, right, because they do kind of look pretty similar. So EFB will be, you'll see kind of the larvae kind of going brown. You'll see a drop in hive numbers. You'll see cap cells that are darker and sunken in a way. And when you get a matchstick or just a stick or anything like that, and you stick it in and you even mush it around a little bit, you pull it out, and you'll see that you're kind of not pulling out a bee, you're just kind of pulling out goo in a way. A lot of people get confused on this one in that they kind of go, they kind of go, oh, look, it's really stringy and it's really long. You've got AFB. Well, there's actually a secondary infection that EFB causes as well, which actually can cause that string to go longer. So that string isn't necessarily AFB. But anyway, you can get little tests that test for EFB and or AFB. They're two individual tests, by the way. Yeah, go.
No, I was just going to say, like, I reckon that's why we need to do this biosecurity one in a couple of weeks and have a bit more of a deeper dive on some of these topics. So I reckon we need to swing back onto that and make sure we load up people on a bit more of that a little bit down the track. What do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. There's a good smell to look out for as well. It's joyous.
Oh, yeah. Had that one before. It's a similar smell to what you find in a kid's lunchbox when you go to get it out at the end of the school holidays and it's been there for 2 weeks.
Yes.
What's that actually doing in there?
The smell is the rotting larvae.
Correct.
Yeah, it's something special.
Oh gosh.
But once you smell it, you'll know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I might just mention what we've been up to in our hives, which is not a whole lot, to tell you the truth. But what we're excited about is what's coming. So we went up to one of our research apiaries just last week and we put a couple more sensors in some hives and just checked on the sensors that we've got going on some of the ones that already had them. And all was looking good. And we saw a hive, much to our pleasure, with some queen cells. And in there, and this was good. This is like, you've got to think of the...
You guys are the only ones that are really happy to see the hive about to swarm. I love it.
So I was looking in this queen cell and I could see not just an egg, but I could see a larvae developing. So we're already 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days into that. And I'm like, you little ripper, this is what we've been waiting for, because when you've got the technology thing happening and you've got data pouring out of your beehive, all you want to do is see some of these occurrences. And that was about nearly a week ago we did that. And for those that don't know, the weather pattern that we're experiencing just around here at the moment is it's cold for the next few days. And Thursday, spring's coming back for a day, like 21 degrees or something.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one of these days where all the swarms want to happen again. And I've sort of timed it in my mind that I reckon Thursday we'll be witnessing a swarm event in our data, in our live data feed. And for us and what we do, we can't help but get pretty damn excited about that. So I'm less excited about what I've done this last 2 weeks, but we're certainly looking forward to what we're going to see over the next week or so. And do you know what? If we're wrong, we will see it. It'll tell us. So it'll be awesome to know what's going on. And I can see Linda's asked about if we've got a camera in the hive. It's not a camera. It's sensing all sorts of other things like temperature and weight and humidity and gases and a few other bizarre things that interest us to learn more about bees. So we can see all this stuff ahead of time. And I can confirm that we've got the absolute dead center of the brood chamber is where we've got a temperature monitor at the moment. And the line that shows over 24 hours, it's basically a flat line sitting at 34.5 degrees Celsius. And like you think of the weather today, it hasn't budged. You think of all the different conditions we've had lately, it hasn't moved at all. Sitting there flat line at 34.5 degrees. And like you read it in a textbook, but it's awesome to see it for real when you look at it in your own hives like that. So anyway, that's just a bit about what we've been up to.
Hey, Simon, have you got audio in that as well?
Yeah, we do. So we listen to the bees as well, but not listen to them like you and we're all listening to here. We're looking at pulling it apart and looking at little different sections of the frequency. And my data engineers and electrical engineers would hear me explain this and just go, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm okay with that because they do their bit and they don't know what bees are all about. So we're working on, we're a team. So with the whole audio thing, we're learning a whole lot about how we can display data there, which tells us a ton of things and tries to tell us things in advance of when they're happening. So I can't tell you we know how to predict all matters of what's going on in a hive, but we're certainly being able to start to go, oh, something's up here. It warrants some sort of attention. And if everything else, if the other metrics are looking okay, like temperature and humidity and weight, well, maybe it's just something not too much to worry about. But when you start seeing a few things change collectively, we know we've got something to find out about.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. All right, so here's something that I told you about today,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering whether or not you guys can actually pick it up and dissect it. All right,
So,
Caroline, I'm going to ask you. Do you know how a queen bee, because obviously it's still spring and we're looking at possibly Thursday swarming, right? Do you know how they get? A queen is normally too big to fly, right? Do you know how they get her to be flight fit?
oh, I love this.
Well, they just put her on a diet.
Oh no, that sounded terrible. I didn't hear what you said.
Yes, they slim her down. Stop feeding her.
Stop feeding her. Yeah. All right.
Shall I try again?
Yeah, go again.
Stop feeding her. I feel like
Here's this one. So what they do is they basically make her walk around, right? So all of the worker bees, I know, I love it. The worker bees go up to her with their two front legs and they shake her, right? And they disturb her from finding a cell to lay in, right? And so as they disturb her from doing that, then, she goes off and then the next worker bee does it. And they do it and they do it and they do it. Essentially, they're putting her on this walking program and she walks around the combs non-stop, not being able to lay or getting your moment's peace until she's slimmed right down enough to fly off. I love it. But
That's wild.
Simon, here's the question for you. That shaking has a noise. And I want to know if you guys can pick it up.
That's an interesting one because we'd need to really dissect when we're likely to have that happening, which is obviously in recent times we would have been able to expect that.
It'd be
the
now,
other thing
yeah.
too, and I don't want to get super technical because it'll bore the brains out of most people, is like the whole data geeky bit is really complicated. Like if you want to stream heaps of data out of a beehive and send it over the airwaves and get it and do stuff with it, like that takes a huge amount of effort. Yeah. And if you're just sampling the sound the whole time, like that's not necessarily the best way to do it and the most effective way to do what you need to do. So you just sample little bits at a time. So I'm talking like 15 seconds every couple of minutes or every 5 minutes. And then that gives you a sample of the behavior and the whole demeanor of the hive for that 15 seconds. Now, you could obviously imagine that if you heard, like one of our sites we had was right near a major road. If you had a truck flying past that time, you're going to get a sample of that. Anyway, we've got ways now where we can reduce that impact, but you can obviously pick up those other noises and other irregularities that happen. But the way we're visualizing the data doesn't necessarily indicate that we know what's going on, but it tells us that this pattern here, if a beekeeper was, and this is what we intend to do in the future, if we are hearing this pattern happening now, and Ryan, the beekeeper, is out there now or can get out there and take a look, he can tell us what's happening right now so that we can go, when the data looks like this, this is happening. Yeah. And we can start to annotate, it's called, that piece of the data. And I don't want to get too, as I said, I didn't want to get too into the details, but it really comes down to a massive effort of beekeepers working with like the tech nerds so that we can like make sense of it all. So there's lots to do to figure all that out.
That's absolutely.
That's what we do.
All right. So Queens, Caroline, you were talking to us. So obviously we're looking at swarms, right? So the queen's leaving the hive. We've got the old queen leaving the hive, the new queen who can either be hatched or still in cell. or in some cases even mated before the old queen leaves. So if it's a swarm, it's normally that is just still a cell. That's normal. So we've got the swarm queens, we've got a supersedure queen, and we've got the emergency queen. So there are 3 type of queens. Now, Caroline, you were saying about a technique that you use in order to create a cell. Can you talk us through it again?
Yeah, so we were talking about potentially the creation of an emergency queen, really. So if you had a queenless hive, and I needed to do this just the other day, I had to grab a frame of brood from another hive to create an opportunity for the other hive to continue going on and build their own. Make an emergency queen was to actually find some cells around the outer edge of as close to the edge as you can of the comb that has an egg in it. Then what you need to do is, if you think about how the bees naturally build a queen cell, they're building it in a vertical formation. So if you manipulate a hope in the bottom of that cell, you're effectively making a vertical cell. The bees realize they don't have a queen in the hive because her pheromones have gone, and they're going to start looking for eggs to build into, to make into queen cells. So by breaking that bottom out, you just making it easier for them to do that.
Okay. All right. For those who are having a few issues.
And I would do it as much as you can. Like, don't just do one cell with one egg in it. Like, I would find a couple of eggs, a couple of cells, location.
Yeah.
Like
all right. So for those that couldn't quite hear Caroline there, so what she's talking about is imagine you got 2 cells. Sorry, I'm using the hands up there. Imagine you got 2 cells like that, one stacked on top of the other like that, and we're talking about breaking this wall so that now it becomes. Sorry, how am I doing this? I'm trying to do it in the round. So now it becomes one big long cell, like that. I suppose if I stopped worrying about what it looks like on the screen and just did it with my hands, then that'd be fine. So we have 2 cells like that, and we're talking about breaking this part here, and now we've got one long cell. So
so it's taken me a few goes to understand this, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So let me say it back to you, Ryan, and you can tell me if I've got this right, and I'm hopefully then ticking the box for anyone else who's confused. So you've got 2 cells, one above each other. The higher one obviously has an egg in it. No doubt that probably the lower one does as well. And you're breaking the wall between the 2 cells. Is that right?
Yes.
And then it gives the ability for that egg as it develops to grow down, which is obviously the preference for a queen cell, is to grow down rather than out, which won't quite work.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's how that works. And it takes up the space of the 2 cells and allows it to grow more down and elongate on a bit more of an angle rather than trying to stick out, which is not really how it's meant to be.
Yeah. So when we're talking about queens, right, and we're talking about swarms, just things to note about the swarm queen. So the swarm queen is the older queen normally, that leaves the hive. So that's kind of like the original queen. It can sometimes be a secondary swarm where that's like a virgin queen. So it can actually be an unmated queen that takes off from the hive, and that's the secondary swarm. And that can happen a 3rd time or even a 4th time sometimes. All right. So your queen is not always necessarily mated, but typically the swarm queen that we're talking about is actually not the queen that's left. This is the queen that's left not the queen that's left the hive. It's the queen that is left in the hive. All right. So the swarm queen. Now, when they're going to swarm, right? Probably the easiest way to explain it is it takes 16 days for a queen cell for a queen to hatch from egg to hatching. All right. At day 4, that's when it actually comes out of the egg and turns into a larvae. At day 8, that's when they cap it. All right. So anywhere from day 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, preferably not 8, but 4, 5, 6, 7, is that they can make a queen out of any of those ages. All right. Now, the best type of queen is the one that's actually been fed royal jelly for the maximum amount of time. So you really want that day 4 larvae, which is a day 1 larvae, to be fed from that point. All right. So a swarm cell, if they're going to swarm, they can choose larvae from any of those ages in between. So the swarm cell that's left in there isn't necessarily the youngest larvae possible. It could actually be the oldest larva possible. The first virgin that's going to hatch will either kill the rest of them still in the cells, or will actually do it maybe a secondary swarm and disappear as well. All right. So that's your swarm. That's your swarm one. Your emergency one. So when you're talking about doing walkway splits, so which is basically where you're taking a bunch of, like if you grabbed a nuke and you filled it full of honey frames of brood eggs and larvae,
yep.
Right, and a whole heap of bees, no queen, and you put it in a different location, then they're going to raise their own queen. Now they're going to raise a queen. They're going to do an emergency cell, right? An emergency cell, they're going to raise one and choose as many different larvae and get a queen as quick as possible. So there's every chance that you're going to have a day 6 or day 7 larvae that is now going to be your queen, and
yep.
that's going to be the one that hatches first,
yep.
as opposed to the day 4 one. Now that's going to have the least amount of royal jelly fed to it. It's probably
yes.
going to be a smaller queen, and if it's smaller, it's going to have a smaller spermatheca. So that's where the queen stores all the sperm, right? So when it goes out to mate, it's not going to be able to mate with as many drones and store as much sperm. So now what's probably going to happen is with those emergency queens, they're of a lower quality and they're probably going to be superseded early.
So you're saying that the first 1 or 2 or 3 or whichever ones come out in the first day or so are less likely to be as productive and useful for the colony going forward, as opposed to one that might have started the process from day 4 or maybe day 5 at a stretch.
Possibly, yeah, there is that chance. I mean, you can't necessarily say that she's going to be less productive or because she could be just as productive, but you could probably say that she's not going to last as long.
Yeah, so this is about optimization.
Yeah,
it's not that there's an inadequate queen there. She could be just as fine, but it's about optimizing and taking every 5% here or there that you can to get the greatest possible outcome for your bees going forward.
So yeah, if you are going to do that, so basically you won't sorry, I'm seeing a thing on here saying, won't the bees sort it out themselves? So the bees will make a queen as quick as possible because it's their job. It's their job to make sure that the colony survives. So basically what they'll do is they will make a queen, and it'll be one of those ones that an emergency queen, it'll have that smaller spermatheca and it will be superseded earlier. So you'll probably find even after 1 season that you might see some supersedure cells in your frames. That's definitely a possibility. The best type of queen is a supersedure queen, because that's actually one that they've actually chosen and fed at the youngest possible age. Now, queen breeders, when they're grafting, they're trying to graft for that youngest possible one. So they're trying to get as close to a supersedure age with swarm-like conditions so that we get our 2 fantastic ways of making queens. So when we're looking at queens, I'd suggest that we buy off, unless you're going to graft yourself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making emergency queens or anything like that. That's absolutely fine. But just be aware of the limitations of that queen. But, go to a breeder or graft yourself. Learn how to graft. It's fantastic knowledge to know.
Caroline did put a note in there. You can try and come back in if you want, Caroline.
Crack, Caroline. Stick come and join us and see if you're going to work.
Oh,
No, definitely snowing. Definitely still snowing.
Yeah.
The joys of living in the middle of nowhere.
We'll send a search and rescue party in the morning if it's safe to do so.
I think your
Thank
microphone's
God.
working. I think you're okay now. I think you're clear now. Go. What were you going to say?
Oh, I said the joys of living in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So, it's such an interesting conversation. I just want to really contribute. I think the most important thing for new beekeepers to know is that you do have an opportunity that you've got the right opportunity to create a queen if you find that your hive is queenless.
Yes.
And I remember when I got started, I was just like, no, I'll just have one hive. One hive is enough.
Sure.
And my mentor kept saying to me, no, you need two. And I hear myself saying that to new beekeepers now, because if you find yourself without any eggs in the hive, where are you going to get a frame of brood that's nearby enough to transport it without chilling the brood, to save your colony? So having two hives on the one site means that you can borrow from one to support the other.
Absolutely.
I really hope that came out.
We got you,
loud
mate.
and
We got you
clear.
loud and clear. And
Yeah.
someone was asking where you're from. Curious to know where it is. And just it's about 20 k's off from the South Pole. Is that right? That's what we're struggling with. No, you're a
So
West.
I'm on the dark side of the moon.
It appears so. You're a West Gippsland beekeeper. If that sort of helps people a little bit to narrow it down.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'm in the foothills of Mount Borbor. So yeah.
There's a really practical question here, which is asked by Bryony. I want to make sure we get to it. It says, how do you differentiate between them preparing a queen for supersedure and a queen for a swarm? I think that's a great question.
Oh, go.
I love this question too, because all the textbooks that you read will tell you that a supersedure cell is built in the middle of the frame, and a swarm cell is typically built around the outer edge of the comb. I mean, not frame, comb. But I believe there's a bit more to it than that. And you can't just look at the placement of the queen cell. There's other variables to look at. So if I found a queen cell in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the comb, I wouldn't automatically think, right, they want to replace her. I would look at, first of all, I'd look at where we are in the season. If it's spring, it's possibly going to be a swarm cell. If her brood pattern is solid as a rock, why would the colony want to replace her? Also, I love getting to know my queen. Get to know your queen. Get to know what she looks like. If she gets damaged in any way, then the colony could want to replace her. So then that's possibly a supersedure cell. But yeah, I'd be suggesting that they're probably swarm cells at the moment.
It's even like in situations where, I don't know, you've put in a sticky or something like that, and they've built it out slightly weird in some shape and form, and that there could be like this kind of indentation in the middle of the frame.
Totally.
According to them, that's still the bottom of the frame, So they go, oh, this is a good spot for an emergency one. Yeah, and you're sitting there going,
really
it
comes
looks like
around. It's around their ability to make a cell that hangs down well, isn't it? So like you say, if there is an abnormality central to the actual frame, the honeycomb, that is just an equally valid spot to allow it to hang down. Do you think there's much to do with temperature by being on the outside of the honeycomb frame, or do you reckon that's not really a thing?
Ooh, good question.
I would think brood likes to be at a pretty consistent temperature all the time, as opposed to change that. But does not the drone like to be on the edge for a slightly different temperature effect? I don't know the answer. I'm just posing the question. So that's something we might look up if we're not sure. But I wonder if that's part of the whole situation.
I think it's normally for room.
room space to be able to get the right cell?
I think so, because normally it's done in an emergency situation.
Yep.
Normally, like,
Yep.
and that's probably I don't know.
Cool. That's
Good
good.
question.
We need to not know every
What
now
was
and
the
again.
question?
Just talking around the idea of if you've got a queen cell in like a swarm cell, and or say even this is relevant to drone cells as well, they're typically around that edge, typically. And do you think that there's a different temperature found on those edges as opposed to more centrally to the whole frame? Does that have any bearing on where they might put a queen cell or drone cells, the actual temperature differential in the hive? There's a bit to unpack in that.
I normally I know well, I mean, most of mine are like double broods anyway. So if it was a double brood, they're normally in the bottom of the top box,
Yep.
which would actually put them in the middle of the
More
hive.
central to the whole brood chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
But singles, they still do it down the bottom. I don't know, man. Good question.
Yeah, just something to think about.
Good question.
So Andrew wanted to ask that if for 8 days we've had bad weather, how do you, if it is impossible to properly check for queen cells for swarm prevention, so what do you suggest?
So you're due for your next inspection, Ryan, tomorrow, but the next week is just going to be disastrous weather that you wouldn't want to go in there and have a look anyway, because you know that it would be fatal for many of your uncapped brood.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow would have been your sort of 10 days to inspect. What's your strategy around
that? Well, I would, first of all, I'd already know, because I would have taken notes. I would have taken notes on how many frames of brood there are, how much space they have, and also if there's a flow on. So I essentially, if I've done my job correctly of taking notes, then I should be able to just go through my notes and be able to roughly do an inspection in that way, like an initial idea inspection, first of all, to kind of go, oh, okay, I think that one's going to do it. I think that one's going to do it. Da, 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 da.
Yep.
Secondly, is you've got to learn how to inspect without pulling out frames. And,
Totally.
you know, that kind of goes back to that thing of, you know, being able to see what's on top, seeing if they're, you know, if they're in contact with honey, lifting them up from underneath to see how many frames the brood are in there. And if you're lifting them up from underneath, where are normally your swarm cells? They're normally down the bottom. So you should be able to see them.
Yeah, that's really good. And a lot of people are afraid to have any sort of look in slightly less than desirable weather. But if you feel like there's a need, that's the way to do it. Without unpacking any of your frames, take a look between boxes.
Yeah. Pick them up, put them on their side so you can see in between. Yeah.
And you're talking about
make sure you put them back down the right way, because if you turn them up the other way, everything falls out and it's not happy bees. I've done it.
Sounds like you may have experienced that one before. Imagine that. And that's good. I'm glad someone asked that. Well, is there anything else you wanted to throw out there, Ryan, about queens and that side of things? Or you reckon we've at least started to scratch the surface?
I think we scratched the surface. The queen breeding is, or, you know, queens in itself is such a large area to delve into. And, you know, I'm not an expert. By no means am I an expert. But essentially just wanted people to kind of understand the differences between queens and kind of what one type of queen will lead onto within your hives.
Yep.
So yeah.
And like, you're right, this is only just getting started. I remember the first time I was queenless when the very second season that I had bees, and I didn't have any second hive or other hives to go to. And I was running around like a headless chicken because I didn't understand the biology of bees, quite frankly. I didn't understand the biology, and therefore I didn't know what options were available to me. And I just simply didn't understand what was going on inside my hive. And I'm sure plenty of people can relate to that. And it comes down to just building. It's nice to be able to be practical and inspect your hive and see what's going on. And it's nice to be able to pull a frame of honey and extract it. But the sooner people go down the path of really understanding that biology, and I still feel like I'm a junior at it, but the better you'll become at knowing what your options are and what's really going on.
Well, to be honest, the biology of it answers so many questions about your hives.
Totally. It's number one.
I think, to be honest, I think that's one of the questions. Once you kind of understand the biology of stuff, you can literally almost look at a hive and just kind of go, I know what's happening. We're good.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to check in with Caroline again. Are you there, mate?
I think I'm here.
Hey, all right.
Well,
I'm quite often off with the fairies, so this is just hilarious. But I'm kind of grateful that it keeps dropping out. You might have accidentally heard some choice words when I was coming back in, maybe. But
nice
sorry.
Nice going. Well, let us throw you a question while we're onto that one. We're just talking about debacles and mistakes and mishaps. Have you ever had any? Well, of course you have. What's one of the biggest mistakes or mishaps that you've had in your beekeeping journey?
Well, yes, I have had a few. But can I share my screen?
Yeah, give it a go.
I don't know, can you?
I don't know, can I? Let's try this.
Oh, come on.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you had the diary up for a second. I knew what you were doing on Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay, so where is the photo? So those who know me will know that I had. Oh, where is it? Where is it?
This is dangerous. You've opened us up to your photo album. Oh.
Check
I
that
put
out.
it on the desktop. Hang on.
It's these these Mac users. We can't help you. Just can't help. Just simply can't help you.
You can't help me, can you? Oh, damn it, it was. So while I'm looking for the photo, I'll try not to go onto anything risque.
Nothing we haven't been down, no path we haven't been down before.
Yeah, you did mention naked beekeeping to me off air.
Oh, I did too.
You really did. I hope
no one
wasn't
asked
me.
for details.
Simon. That's your next thing. Next one is.
I'm going to say no to that one. Like, I think that's where it ends, and we don't need to have that experience. If people get out there and get amongst it and do that sort of thing, no, not this guy.
Oh my God! What are you showing there?
Open that one up. I've got to see this.
So this is what we call the great honey spill of 2019, I think it was, 2018.
Oh my Lord.
No.
So that is what looks like, that's only part of what looks like 30 kilos of honey in the back of my Corolla. So when I first started beekeeping, I had a Corolla. And I had some 20-litre buckets of honey in the back, and there was a tarpaulin on the floor in the back of the Corolla, so seats were folded down, and I had like heaps of honey buckets in the back. I ran it like a little ute, basically. So, but yeah, so the honey tap, the honey gate, the bucket had kind of fallen over a little bit, and it was resting on the gate, which meant the pressure opened that gate. When I walked to my car in the morning, I could see like a bit of a wet patch on the ground, and I was like, maybe I'll check the oil later or something. Got to the back of the car, and so all the honey, because the car was on a bit of a lean, all the honey had ran off the tarpaulin and down to the lowest point that it could get to, which was that's the passenger.
That is a debacle.
Wow.
Yeah.
What flavour was that? Footwear.
Well, Charlie's just commented in the notes, that's the special Corolla varietal honey with a hint of carpet fluff. Touche,
yes. Mate. Yeah. So I worked out that the street value of this honey was at about $770.
Oh, a kilo.
at
Nice.
the time. So it's nearly $800 down the drain. And yeah,
Wow.
a lot of I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And then I had a lot
I'm
of
crying.
advice as to how, I had a lot of advice on how to clean it up. So some very experienced beekeepers, if we're going to talk about biosecurity in a future episode, a very experienced beekeeper suggested that I just drive my car to my apiary and open the doors.
That'd do it. That would do it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So obviously feeding bees honey from other beehives is a big biosecurity no-no. So I had my car detailed. That was my 17-year-old stepdaughter at the time. She actually helped me clean it out. And then I had the car detailed. And the guy was awesome, and you couldn't tell. But there were lots of people telling me that the honey would have, seeped through those carpets, and it's over time it's just going to ferment. So I don't know if I should admit to what I did next.
You sold it.
This takes the cake. No one's going to be able to beat you in mishaps. Beat this one in mishaps for a while. This is like the top of the list.
Well, from this, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to a novice beekeeper?
Yeah, make sure you check the honey gate on your honey buckets if you're going to transport them. Actually, you know what I do now? So what I do now is I put the honey bucket into a milk crate so it's not going to fall over. And also what I have a rule now that no honey tubs go inside the cab of my new ute.
That's good. That's a good one. I think that's keeping it simple, isn't it, to avoid that ever happening again. Oh,
yeah.
What a disaster.
Yeah. It did happen again, but it happened with a bucket of sugar syrup, and it happened in the back of the ute.
In the back, that's okay. You can watch
At least sugar syrup might be worth $10 as opposed to $700 worth of honey.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, you've had your fair share.
But beekeeping's such an adventure that there's one of my favorite sayings is there's never a dull moment. Something interesting always is going to happen. The bees are going to keep you on your toes. You're going to be processing wax one day and it will likely explode, so just watch your temperatures. There is so many things, and it's all part of the adventure, so just have fun, just laugh it off.
Oh, that's wild.
Love it.
Now, we should tell people, and I know some of them here are part of your mentorship group, Caroline. You're one of the mentors on Hive Buddy, and an absolutely legendary one at that. There's lots of very privileged people to have that opportunity. If people would like to spend more time hanging around you and learning how to clean the back of a Corolla and the like, they can go and take a look over at the Hive Buddy website and be someone who joins your mentorship group. How lucky could people be? I think that's not a bad deal.
Oh, absolutely. Sharing in those kind of adventures. And yeah, we do have some great adventures, my bee buddies and I, and super grateful to be part of the mentoring program. And there's a great bunch that I've got on board, and I look forward to doing some future programs with more people. We get to share our adventures together. So thank you.
Indeed. Well, there'll be more discussion after this, as there usually is over at Hive Buddy, if we want to continue some of those conversations over there over the next few days. And we can't tell you when the next session's going to be, guys, but it's always visible and available over on the Hive Buddy website, where you can see when the next show is going to come up. We'll get that confirmed and up there in the next few days. We've tried to make that as easy as possible. And I guess the other thing too is, if you like what we're doing here and you want to help us push this along a little bit, please don't hesitate to share what we're doing with your friends and others. It's good to get that little bit of extra help to get the word out there. Like what we're doing, share it around. That means a lot to us. It helps keep people coming back and helping share in the conversation. Any parting shots, Ryan?
No, have fun out there. Be inquisitive. Learn as much as you can. Love it. Have fun.
Well, Caroline, Ryan, Prashant, thank you so much for you all, and thanks to everyone for getting in here tonight and listening.